All right, man, peace. So, brothers, if you've been listening to my videos for a while, especially pertaining to LeBron James, I've been alluding to the notion that, in my view, it's very clear to me that LeBron James, or LeBron James Incorporated, which means what? Clutch Sports, Nike Incorporated, etc., have without a doubt been paying certain members of the mainstream liberal sports media, or mainstream sports media, whatever you want to call them, to say good things about him. Well, Steven Jackson is pretty much going to assert that himself in an attempt to justify why he's sending so much vitriol in the way of Mr. Damon Jones and Mr. Ryan Hollins, the two resident idiots who have taken over for Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman hosting First Take while they both were on vacation. For those of you who don't know, Damon Jones and Ryan Hollins have gotten into a bevy of idiotic debates about topics that are way above their level. Even basketball is way above their level, because I'm telling you, when I say that both of these guys are intellectually challenged, that's putting it nicely. That's putting it very, very lightly, that they're both intellectually challenged. And what's interesting is that I caught one of their debates last week and I did a video on it. And this was before I saw Steven Jackson basically harpoon the both of them. The reason why he's so upset is that he obviously witnessed one of their debates, that being, who is under more pressure to perform or to succeed next season? Is it Steph Curry or James Harden? Damon Jones stated that it is Steph Curry who's under more pressure to succeed next season, even more than James Harden, a player who's never won anything, who has had a bevy of postseason meltdowns. And yet Damon Jones stated that he believes that it is Steph Curry who's under more pressure to perform. And in the video that I did pertaining to the debate that I covered between Damon Jones and Ryan Hollins, it was very clear to me, and I highlighted it in the video, that Damon Jones is someone who's been compromised. He's someone who's saying what needs to be said to maintain a lot of his relationships in the basketball world, because it's very obvious that that is how he got the job at ESPN in the first place. Keep in mind that the last time we saw Damon Jones as a head coach, he was getting hot soup thrown at him by Mr. JR, aka Just Retarded Smith. And it's very clear that the reason why Just Retarded threw that soup at him is because he was having an encounter with someone who was just as idiotic and buffoonish as himself. And that happens in many of these locker rooms, where you have 3 or 4 mentally challenged dudes and they end up butting heads. But anyway, Steven Action Jackson is not only going to harpoon / lambaste both Ryan Hollins and Damon Jones, he's also going to say pretty point blank that he knows that Damon Jones only has a job at ESPN because LeBron James planted him there and wants him to say good things about LeBron James. Once again, Ryan Hollins and Damon Jones had a debate last week that I made a video out of, where Ryan Hollins asked Damon Jones point blank, do you believe that LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan? And it looked like Damon Jones was about to vomit, because he knew that he would not mean what he was going to say, or how he was going to answer was not going to be genuine. But he knew that he had to answer LeBron James, because if he didn't, LeBron was going to end their relationship, and he was probably going to lose his job down the line, and he would have no more connections in the entertainment industry. So anyway, we're going to let Steven Jackson speak. They're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
You know, my guy, Steven Jackson posted something on Instagram yesterday. I need y'all to take a listen to what my guy had to say. Listen up.
First of all, it should be a rule. If you ain't averaged 20 points at all your career for a season, or if you ain't averaged 10 for a career, you shouldn't be talking basketball on TV.
Now, the reason why Steven Jackson stated that is because that's his way of creating a line of demarcation between himself and Ryan Hollins and Damon Jones. But in reality, he should have just addressed them individually and stated the truth, that being that they're both idiots. Ryan Hollins is a buffoon, and the only reason why he has a job at ESPN is because he's a Luciferian. And a lot of cats might say, what are you talking about? No, Ryan Hollins is a Luciferian, i.e. a Mason, or a member of a fraternal order. That's why he has the job on ESPN, because he has no talent whatsoever. He's a complete idiot, and his basketball IQ is beneath the basement. He never says anything that makes any sense whatsoever, but Stephen A. Smith has tapped him as his replacement whenever he goes on vacation. So, And when it comes to Damon Jones, I mean, give me a break. He's a complete joke.
Let me add this. If you ain't half-baked on Instagram...
Whitlock getting at Steven Jackson. Thing about Steven Jackson, though, is that he don't give a shit if you know that he's a weed head.
Be calling out people. How about not averaging 10 points? I'm half-baked all the time. Second,
and I'm gonna ask y'all a question.
hold on, man.
Man, for
your
real.
boy Matt Barnes.
9.7. That's right. You round out to 10 points.
I want you to say this in front of Matt Barnes.
I talk to him every day.
I want you to say this right now.
I talk to him every day. He ain't never seen it. He know what I said. He ain't never seen it though.
He said I can round up.
That's close enough. That's close enough.
Let me ask you this.
Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes, a.k.a. the Black Cheech and Chong. They're supposed to be getting their own sports commentating show. I don't know what they're going to call it. I guess they're going to call it Up in Smoke. Who the hell knows?
Let me ask you this. Bruce Bowen?
What about Bruce Bowen?
He can't talk?
Well, Whitlock, is obvious that the Clippers don't believe that Bruce Bowen can talk because they fired his ass when he said something stupid about Kawhi Leonard. Bruce Bowen actually is an example of what Steven Jackson is talking about, and I've touched on this in previous videos. When you have role players who become commentators, they can only assess a situation from the perspective of a role player. So when Bruce Bowen starts speaking about Kawhi Leonard, he's speaking way above his pay grade, way above his level of understanding, because his job on the Spurs is something disparate from anything even remotely resembling Kawhi Leonard. So that's why he got fired from the Clippers. And that was the first hint that the Clippers were going to be willing to do whatever it takes to land Kawhi. And also, they had someone following him around for the entire season.
He won some championships. He wasn't that good. That wasn't criteria. That wasn't the
great
criteria.
defenders in the league.
Bruce Bowen is one of the dirtiest players of the last 25 years. He was a very good defender, yes, but he also was one of the dirtiest players of the last 25 years. And he had to play dirty just to stay in the league. That's why it makes no sense for him to be commentating or commenting on Kawhi Leonard, because Kawhi does not have to play dirty to dominate.
He wasn't defensive player of the year. He can't talk.
I said he was a great defender.
Yeah.
But he can't talk.
That don't
Your
want
criteria. Yeah, he nay.
It's about buckets.
Yeah, he nay. To me, he was a great defender. Okay, explain yourself first.
And a dirty player. And once again, Steven Jackson, all you had to say in response to Whitlock's question of whether or not Bruce Bowen can talk is obviously the Clippers don't believe that he can talk because they fired his ass for saying something stupid about Kawhi Leonard.
What provoked the comment?
Yeah, what's this about? I'm gonna ask y'all the question. Who has more to prove? Steph Curry, a guy with 3 championships and 2 MVPs, or James Harden? James Harden.
Obviously, James Harden.
Okay, so for a basketball player to go on TV and say that kills all our integrity. He said Steph Curry did. No, David Jones.
David Jones.
Yeah,
I think it kills his credit.
It kills all basketball players' integrity because it seems like you're going out there and have an agenda.
Of course he has an agenda, but there are a lot of people out there in the media who have an agenda, Steven Jackson. That's why it's a good thing that you and Matt Barnes are getting your show. Even some of your friends at Fox Sports 1 have an agenda. There's no way that you're not going to tell me that Shannon Sharpe does not have an agenda. And it's very obvious that he's getting his palms greased. I did a video a while ago in reference to some of the Michael Jordan versus LeBron James debates that Shannon Sharpe has with Skip Bayless. And they had to formulate a top 10 all-time greatest player list. And even Shannon Sharpe put Michael Jordan at number 1. That's how you know that a lot of what these guys say on television is pure shtick. Colin Cowherd, when he's caught up in the season, says that LeBron James is the greatest player ever. But in the offseason, when he has time to calm down, to cool his jets, he always says that Jordan is the greatest ever. So there are a lot of LeBron James operatives sprinkled throughout the sports media, both on ESPN and Fox Sports 1, who say things that are either disingenuous or delusional. And they all should be called out, not just Damon Jones. Damon Jones just happens to be the dumbest person on either sports network.
I think it kills
Everybody in their right mind knows Steph has nothing to prove with 3 championships and 2 MVPs. If you go on TV and say, we know you live in Houston, we know that you're friends with the guys, go find another job. You're killing our integrity. And I had to say something because this is my job.
I will say this, though. I think that the job that Damon Jones does in commenting on national television or on ESPN or commentating, whichever term you want to use, is so atrociously deplorable and bad that I'm not even quite sure if it's a reflection on anyone else from the NBA world who speaks about professional basketball. Like, that's how bad his commentating is, and that's how partial and subjective it is. It's really deplorable and atrocious.
I don't know, am I good? You might almost said it. I
almost said it.
But,
you my
all right, Stacks, hold on. This is my
I'll be back
pushback.
next segment.
I thought it was good smoke. I thought it was great. But I also thought it was like convenient criteria for you to get in and then, you know, like to exclude a lot of other people. Like, let's just be real. Why is it not like all NBA or all-stars and stuff? Why is it just 10 points? Like, because 10 points is still scrub work, ain't it?
That's
No, not quite. 10 points per game is really role player. Scrub is just someone who can't get off the bench. You can be a 10-point per game guy and be a role player and be an essential player on the team. It's just that you have to fulfill that role. There are certain players that you expect those 10 points. I'll give you an example. In the 2016 NBA Finals, the Golden State Warriors, they expected 15 to 16 points from Harrison Barnes. They expected 10 points from, what's this guy from South America, Leandro Barbosa. They didn't get those points, so they lost in the finals.
Points not average 10 in the NBA is not bad.
No,
That's not bad.
Myself, I'm on defender.
That's not bad.
Honest goodness. And I'm not even going to put a name on it. But, man, if you just barely made it in the NBA because you were tall for a bunch of years.
I.e. Ryan Hollins. Now, that's a scrub for real. That dude is a scrub-a-dub-dub.
I just don't know. When you come out with statements like this, it does make it seem like, well, this is the only way anybody take me pay attention to trolling.
But you know,
Well, it's very obvious that Ryan Hollins and Damon Jones have been heavily influenced by Stephen A. Smith. And they believe that bombast can replace content. They believe that yelling and screaming and carrying on is going to make people believe that you're entertaining when you're really not. What makes Stephen A. Smith's style of articulation and commentating so entertaining is that not only is it full of bombast and pomp, but he also makes real points.
like that on national TV when people are expecting us to give our honest opinion and not say stuff because we try to be friends with people, and that's basically what he said on TV.
But I think the beauty of it is that you got real cats that have done it and have been there calling it out. I think that's what makes it pretty cool because, I was saying before, it's levels to this, right? I can speak to things that apply to being a perennial Pro Bowler, at times being an All-Pro, or in college being an All-American. But I'm not going to be a Hall of Famer.
Right.
So if I start going into the realm of talking about what the Gold Jackets are going to talk about, now I went out of my lane. I can stay in my lane. He can stay in his lane and talk to it to the level of which I was on the team with these guys. I understand it from the...
Well, the problem with that is that ESPN expects some type of heated debate or verbal discourse, and they're going to have to speak about players that are way above their level. Ryan Hollins and Damon Jones are conversing about James Harden and Stephen Curry. These are two players that are at least 4 to 5 levels above them. So the only way that they're going to be able to compensate for the lack of understanding of what those players have to bring to the table on a nightly basis and what's expected of them, and therefore the pressures that are going to be imputed upon them, is to cover it with a lot of empty, hot air. So that's where the problems come in. And then when you combine that with Damon Jones being disingenuous and having agendas that he has to perpetuate and propagate on the national airwaves, that's why Stephen Jackson was encouraged to call him out. And it's a good thing that he did.
Playing with these guys. I wasn't that guy, but I played with these guys. So it's the credibility of it.
I also know, too, since we being real, I didn't get on TV because somebody made a call so I can talk good about him.
Oh.
I got on TV from my natural hard work and opportunity.
Uh-oh. Well, Stephen Jackson, who you talking about, brother? I need you to name names. Since you always keep it real, I need you to drop that name. I know who you're talking about, and anybody with a brain knows who you're talking about. You're talking about LeBron James. You're saying that LeBron James got Damon Jones a job at ESPN so that Damon Jones could say good things about LeBron James on the national airwaves. Be real about it, Stephen Jackson. Go all the way there with it. And I agree with you. I've said that for a very long time, that it's very clear that LeBron James and Nike Incorporated or whoever are paying some of the members of the media to say good things about him. That's their job. And they're getting their palms greased. I remember a while ago a cat came in my comments and said, even Nick Wright a few years ago said that he believed that Kevin Durant is better than LeBron James. And this was about 3-4 years ago that this cat in the comment section said that Nick Wright said this. It was on his Twitter feed, and then of course he subsequently erased it because he became Team LeBron about 2.5 years ago, whenever he started that show with Chris Carter. Chris Carter is another guy who's Team LeBron. These guys understand that when they jump on the LeBron bandwagon, they're going to be thoroughly compensated for what they say. And also a while ago, this was back when Joy Taylor was still the moderator on Undisputed with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp. She even alluded to it, and I'm sure that many of you brothers remember this, at the end of one of their debates. It was near the end of the show when she said that she found out something about Shannon, which explains why Shannon is always on the side of LeBron. And Shannon's someone who's stuck down that woke rabbit hole and that social media rabbit hole anyway. A lot of his stances are just to amplify his image amongst the internet revolutionaries and the wokey wokes. He says a lot of so-called pro-black stuff so that he can get more followers on Instagram. He's heavily into that.
Damn, Monday, we got Monday question of the day.
It's going to be interesting to see if one of those two idiots on ESPN tries to respond to Stephen Jackson. I doubt if they will. But still, it was very interesting that he would bring that to light, because I've been saying that for a while now. So anyway, peace.